Hello, everyone. Yuval Teren is here, a communication coach and human analyst. And we are here today with Tessa Veksler, a Jewish leader that educates the world about Israel and the Jewish student experience. She is on a mission to stop anti-Semitism and make college campuses a welcoming place for all. Tessa, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me, Yuval.
Yes, I'm very excited for you to be here on the show and share your own personal story and journey from your life. So I would love to hear from you a little bit about what are you currently doing, and then we're going to track back to see what led you into doing those amazing things that you stand for today.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm a fourth year student right now at UCSB. I study political science and communication, and I've been on campus for 3 years. My first year, I did a gap year in Israel. I studied at Bar Ilan University. So the past 3 years that I've actually been at UCSB, I've been involved in student government. And I guess my roles have kind of been this steady progression where I started working in the office that I now am the boss of, but I was, in the office of the president, and I then ran for Senate, and then I ran for president. So it's kind of just been like this steady climb through campus leadership and learning along the way. And at the same time, while I've been involved in student government, I was, of course, heavily involved in the Jewish community. I sat on several boards before I became the president. So Jewish community leadership was always something that was important to me. And when I stepped into my role as president, I gave up my leadership role specific to the Jewish community to really focus in on, the greater campus community. And I don't think anyone could have possibly predicted October 7th, and especially, the impact that October 7th would have on American campus life. So kind of for the past, 7 months, I guess today is 7 months since October 7th. It's been really a challenge being in this position, and also being Jewish and someone who's so heavily affected by what's going on, but also dealing with the campus climate and learning along the way, because I think my job to represent the entire campus community has been overshadowed by this consistent anti-Semitism on campus and anti-Israel sentiments that cause a really hostile environment just to be Jewish. And I guess for me, in my role, how that's reflected on a personal level is the fact that a lot of anti-Semitism at UCSB specifically has been directed at me as an individual, with attempts to remove me, with a constant barrage of online harassment that I've been experiencing since October. So, it's just been a whirlwind, to say the least.
So, it's amazing to see. So, I'm from Israel. I served in the army, then I came to the US. And it's amazing to see as an Israeli, you don't think that maybe things that happened in Israel will have such a big impact around the Jewish
Right.
community all around the world and the world in general. But now living in the US, I see how big impact it is and how anti-Semitism grew here. And it's not something that relates only to Israel, but it relates to humans in general, Jews, non-Jews. It's something that affects everyone, because it's people express hate towards people, and it's something that is sadly happening in 2024. So
Right.
maybe share with us, do you have maybe a personal experience that you had, as you said, on campus? Maybe share with us a little bit about this experience. How did it start, and what happened from there?
Yeah. Um, Also, I just wanted to say, like, as for you to say, as an Israeli, that you're realizing how what happens in Israel affects Jewish Americans. I think that that's a big motivator that I personally have as to why I'm so vocal, is because I know that as an American, the least that I can do is be outspoken about my Jewishness, being outspoken about my support for Israel as a Jewish state. And, that's like the least I can contribute as an American. And I think a lot of Americans need to know that. So that's kind of been what's kept me going, I guess, through this whole process. But in terms of kind of what I've been going through, let's say since October 7th, um, Well, October 7th was over Shabbat. So when I didn't keep Shabbat, so I didn't really know what was going on when things first started happening. And I woke up the morning of October 7th, and I remember like my housemates looking at me, waiting for me to wake up. And they're like, Tessa, there's a war in Israel. And I'm like, there's always a war in Israel. You know, I've been there. I lived there. I lived through 2 wars in Israel. Whatever, the rockets fly and then it's over. And they were like, no, this is different. And I remember seeing like the first things that kind of started coming out, like these videos that started coming out from Israel. And in that, over that weekend, I was thinking to myself, first of all, the tragedy of everything that was happening, but also I had an instinct that my role on this campus was going to change completely, because I could not say anything. I had to say something. So I did. So basically on October 9th, when I was back and logged onto my phone, I went on social media and I made a post, and the post said something along the lines of standing up for Jewish human rights is not political. And I wrote this post about why, October 7th was so significant for the Jewish people, what a tremendous loss it was, how upsetting it is. And from that day, from October 9th, everything completely changed in terms of my experience here, because people started endlessly harassing me online. So it was just anti-Semitic comment after anti-Semitic comment, like so much hatred. And then I guess my lack of shutting up made people more and more upset, because I continued to speak out about what was happening in Israel, and I continued to speak out against anti-Semitism. So this kind of led a group of students here at UCSB to start an effort to impeach me, basically, from my role. And I kind of tried for many months to deal with the situation with administrators, with the individuals themselves, to try to find some type of solution without making it a public, issue. I wanted to resolve it, and I wanted to move forward, and I wanted to do my job. And then in February, the incident that kind of made me this person that people now know on Instagram was what happened at our multicultural center, where people went and they put this sign up that said Zionist not allowed. And, I posted this picture of me standing in front of it with my bring them home tag. And I also shared a bunch of the images that were inside of the multicultural center that were directly threatening and targeting me. And I think that kind of blew up. And when people started listening, I knew I had to keep sharing. And unfortunately, the more you share, the worse, the more support you get. And also along comes a lot of hate. So thank God the impeachment effort failed, just like 1 or 2 weeks ago. But the harassment has not really ended. And that's kind of where I am now, and is kind of working through it. And especially from these past 2 weeks and the encampments and all of this hostility that's been increasing on campus, I think things have become kind of something I've never seen before, put it that way.
Wow, seeing so many campuses around the US experience so much hate, and all of those kind of supposedly protests, but basically hate speeches against Jews, not letting
Right.
students go into school and into their classes. What's going on in Columbia University, in UCSB, all around the US.
Right.
Why do you think the schools doesn't do anything with it, not reacting to it, keep it, let it
Right.
happen?
I have a lot of theories. I think it varies campus to campus. I do think, and I strongly believe that this is going to be discovered, that a lot of this has to do with funding and the fact that Qatar is one of the biggest funders of American universities today, and that there's no way that funding is not conditional. And I do believe that universities are pressured by this funding to allow certain narratives, even if they're pro-Hamas or pro-terrorism narratives, to persist on their campuses. That's one. The second, I mean, it's so obvious that administrators have completely lost their grasp on accountability and on the student population. And, this constant thing that I keep hearing when I speak to administrators here is, we're afraid of retaliation. We're afraid of the reaction, of escalation, rather than like, why are you afraid of your own students? Why are you afraid of how your own students are going to act? And why are you allowing in a prestigious academic institution for students to behave that way? There's nothing wrong, in my opinion, with protesting, with civil disobedience, with any of these things. But the reality is that civil disobedience is supposed to come at a cost. That's what makes it disobedience. But if it doesn't come at a cost, then it's just simply you doing what you're allowed to do. Because if there's no accountability, you're not breaking any rules, technically. Technically you are, but if there's no enforcement, then what's the point? So I think that a lot of these administrators have completely lost their grasp. And I also think it seems to me that administrators are lost because there are not clear boundaries from the government about what is and is not anti-Semitic. You cannot persecute anti-Semitism on college campuses when you as a university don't know how you define anti-Semitism. So until, Congress says from the river to the sea is an anti-Semitic chant, and an administration says we do not allow anti-Semitic chants on our campus, or we do not allow them if it's a direct threat, then that's where you're supposed to take accountable actions. But I just don't see that happening because I don't think it's clear. And that's why I think it's imperative to make it explicitly clear.
Wow. It's sad to see the reaction of schools towards the Jewish students, or actually not taking any action against it. Maybe now I saw some schools that act a little bit, but it took too long for them to react.
Absolutely,
what's your experience? What do you experience in your school right now? Is there any change, anything that they do towards it to make it better, to help to decrease the hate and have a peaceful life on campus?
I think that it's kind of a slow change that's taking place. And again, I believe that unfortunately we're at a point, I'm actually someone who believes that change has to happen from the community. I believe if we want change on a campus, the students have to want it. The students have to want a campus that's safe for Jews. The administration can't force that. It has to be a collective. But unfortunately, I do think we're at the point where it does have to come from a higher source. And I think something that has been kind of at the forefront of my mind, because I've been in a lot of situations at UCSB where Jewish students are expected to comply, because we always do, because we're rule followers, because we don't want to disrespect our administration, because we don't want to sacrifice the academic integrity of the universities which we attend. But the problem is that Jews and Jewish students don't fit into the mold of a minority that universities have created. And that's kind of one of the main issues that we're seeing with DEI and the criticisms around DEI, is that Jews fail like the box of a minority because we succeed, because we prevail, because we're proud, because no matter how bad anti-Semitism is on campus, the Jewish students aren't going anywhere. That's the point. So for administration, I think they're having a hard time seeing unless that Jews are actually being persecuted and they can't go to campus and they're actually being affected by this in a way that we can see, then anti-Semitism can't really be that bad of a problem. And I think that's they kind of expect us to cower and to hide and to, go and not go to class and to not succeed and to not build successful professional careers and earn money and build families. And we do it. We break every single mold that a minority is supposed to be, according to the university system and according to the US system, to be frank. So that's part of the problem that I'm seeing, is that they have a hard time understanding how anti-Semitism is a problem.
It reminds me a story of, there is a kid comes to his father and tells him, "Dad, I want to play with you." He said, "I don't have time for it right now. I gotta work." But so his dad takes a newspaper, tear it to small pieces, give it to the kid, and says, put all the pieces back together. The kid sees, puts a picture of the world. So the kid puts a piece by piece, and then he comes back to his father with, the whole globus. All the pieces are matches together. He gives him the full puzzle that he made. And his father looks at it impressed, and he tells him, "Wow, how did you do it? It's impressive. A kid in your age knows how to build the world like this." The kid tells him, "I just looked at the back of the newspaper. There was a picture of a person, and I know how people look, so I put together the pieces of the person, and then the world was complete." So the idea is that if we want to make the world a better place, we have to become better people. And I think it's something amazing that you do when you educate people about Jewish, Israel, show the anti-Semitism that goes out there. You educate people to become better people. When we're educating ourselves with the truth, with the right information, then we don't feel with hate, but instead we have compassion and understanding, and we're open up to listen more and learn more. And I feel that's what many students on college campuses that do all of those chanting for Hamas and support Hamas, which is a terrorist organization, they lack of education. At least that's what I want to believe, that they don't have the education about it. And what do you think, maybe an idea that maybe could open more students and expose more students that, all of those students that chant for Hamas, have you talked with them? Maybe you experienced their background, what's their ideas behind it? Do they know what they're chanting about?
Some of them do, and I understand where you're coming from and wanting to kind of picture as if all of these people are ignorant, but unfortunately there is, a group of these students where they're actually not ignorant at all. They genuinely, I think, hate Jews. And I think that that's where this comes from. And I think that they think they're very smart, and they kind of are, because they've figured out this genius way to be anti-Semitic without being caught for it. So I think in terms of changing minds, it's very difficult. But I think it comes from, first of all, the truth, which eventually I do believe reveals itself. And the second is from humanization, because it's very, very easy to hate and to want to destroy something when you do not humanize it, when it isn't I don't know, when it's not tangible to you, when you don't really see it, you don't understand it. That's why, I think that it's so important. Like I always say, I'm like, can you just go to Israel? Because if you just look at it yourself and you just see how people live and how people exist, you'll probably walk out with some criticisms. Of course, most of the country criticizes every aspect of society that's part of a healthy democracy. But they would see that so many of these conceptions that they have are not true. And I think a lot of it also comes from creating the next generation to be critical thinkers, because I think the problem is that people my age, and I guess in the digital age, are absorbing whatever short form content they see, and they don't know how to think critically through something that's being shared with them. So it's not, their thought process isn't going, okay, I read that Israel bombed this, but also it's reported by the Gaza Health Ministry, which is run by Hamas. Their thought process isn't going that far to understand the source of where their information is coming from. And I think that if anyone kind of looked a little bit introspectively at that, I think they would question, why am I believing the words of a terrorist organization over the words of a democracy or the rest of the world? So I think a lot of it has to do with disinformation, misinformation online, being unable to actually analyze it and understand it, and being taught to do that. Maybe that's a new curriculum we have to introduce in our education system here in the US. And and the rest of it is dehumanization. And that's exactly why I tell Jewish students that you have to attend schools like Berkeley and Columbia and Harvard, because if you're not there, then they're never going to know you. Who's going to know? Or the person maybe that knows nothing and they see the encampment, they have to also see the Jewish students with Israeli flags. They have to see both, because both creates at least a sense of doubt or a sense of dissonance or a sense of, okay, so there are two sides to this to understand. But if there's only one thing that you can see, how can you possibly acknowledge the other truth that exists? So that's part of what I think.
I agree 100%. Definitely. The more not allowing people to break us down and destroy us,
Right.
by hiding ourselves, it gives a hand for hatred, for ruining the world, for supporting hate. And it's now it's Jews, tomorrow it's someone else. So it fills the world with hate. But standing out there, standing for what's right, showing ourselves, that's what gives the right to show out the light to the world and educate people,
Right.
and show that it is important to stand for what's right. So, you shared with us, we talked about Israel and Judaism and anti-Semitism and the campus life right now. I want to hear from you a little bit about what allows you, because we're all people, but something in you is allowing you to stand out there and speak for what's right. Not only, think it for yourself, but stand out there and speak it out to the world. What do you think it's something that you feel or allows you to do it confidently and share it with the world? So maybe we have listeners here that can take it for themselves and learn from your courage to express themselves out and the truth out there.
I do think that a piece of this is inherent to who I am as a person. So I think that, like, I've always been someone who's kind of gone against the grain. I was always someone who I didn't mind being disliked as long as I liked myself. So if I can live with myself at the end of the day, I don't really care if, like, some random person on the street doesn't like me, because I trust myself and I trust the way that I was raised. I trust my family and my friends. I care what they think. So, if I know really if I'm messing up if they tell me, but everyone else, it doesn't really matter. I think also something that I remind myself that keeps me kind of strong in terms of my advocacy specifically is just the knowledge that I know that Israel and the Jewish people are not going anywhere. Like, I know that no matter how long these people camp in these tents or how long people chant on the streets, that Jewish people are going to continue existing, not only existing, but thriving. Israel is going to continue existing and growing and thriving. So it's this idea of trying really not to internalize this threat that they're trying to make you feel. And listen, like, it is absolutely a threat to our society in terms of anti-Semitism, in terms of how Jews are being treated right now. But I know, because of my 3,000 years of Jewish history that's already, like, within me, that we are resilient and that we get through really difficult times, and I just know that we're going to get through it. And I would say the third thing is just inherent Jewish values. I tell Jewish students this all the time when they're like, whenever you think, oh, it's so hard to be Jewish, just remind yourself the things that you are gifted by being Jewish that no one else has. You are gifted values that a lot of people don't get to find out until they're, like, in their 40s and they read a self-help book. That's literally given to you in the Torah, in the way that you're raised in your Jewish life, in your Jewish family. The values that we have are a gift to this world, and something that, again, takes most adults a very long time to learn. The other thing is community. We're given a gift of community where no matter where life takes you, if you succeed in a job, if you fail in a job, if, like, the entire, your entire student population hates you, you have just because you're Jewish, you have a Jewish community that has your back. it's kind of this idea of like when you're in Israel and you're walking around on a Friday afternoon, like if you don't have somewhere to go for Shabbos, someone's going to take you in for Shabbos. There's like no way that someone's not going to invite you into their home. So, and they don't care who you are as long as you're Jewish. You're Jewish, you're part of you're part of the mishpacha. So that's like how I feel about it. And I think I remind myself that. And in terms of, yeah, like, and the strength I think is internal. I think it's like embedded in who I am as a person. It's embedded in who I am as a Jewish person. And I think I garner strength from seeing other people around me be strong as well. I think that there's a lot of really incredibly strong advocates right now online and in person that I really admire. And I think that that also helps me keep going.
That's amazing. So maybe do you have, if our listeners should take one thing from our conversation, one thing that you want them, don't forget that thing, what would it be? Or maybe something that it's important for you to say, one thing that you want them to remember after our conversation here.
I think that wow, it's a very high pressure question. I'm trying to think of the best answer that I can give. I think again, just to remind yourself that you're going to be okay and that everything will eventually fall into place the way that it's supposed to. You're not behind anyone. You're not really ahead of anyone. You're at the right time and in the right place that you're supposed to be. I used to have very deep-seated anxiety about how things were going to turn out when things first started happening, like the first time that I started experiencing very intense harassment on social media. I would have like these super long panic attacks where I would just be like doomsday. Like, this is the worst thing that could possibly happen, and how is it ever going to get better? And I think that it's just really important to kind of try to see beyond. Like, what's happening on campuses right now feels like the beginning of an end, feels like an end within itself, like it's the worst thing that could possibly happen. We have to try to see through it. What is happening after this stage? And I think that that really helps me, and just knowing that like things will end up exactly how they should, and that you have a world of Jewish people, and thankfully a lot of allies that are joining us every day, that have your back, and I have your back. So if there's ever anyone in need, I have your back, and you can reach out to me. And I hope that people can learn from me that even someone who has gone through what I've gone through still wants to improve the world that we live in, and still wants to improve the lives of all students on this campus, even though I'm leaving it soon. You have the ability to make an impact. No matter how many times people tell you that you don't deserve to be somewhere, you do, and you should stay exactly where you should be.
That's amazing. So, Tessa, I want to thank you for being with us today and share your inspiration and insights from your own personal life. I want to make sure also our listeners, they can find you on Instagram. Your Instagram is Tessa Veksler, TessaVeksler.
Yep, that's right.
All right, perfect. So also find Tessa on Instagram, follow her, educate yourself with her great content. Thank you so much for being with us today, and keep on spreading your light out there to the world and share the truth out there.
Thank you, Yuval. Will do.